Pandemic apparently taking a toll on young students across the city. New research indicates a concerning drop in math scores.
Chris Welsh caught up with an expert on standardized tests, and he's here with more now. Chris?
Yeah, Stephen, Laura, there's a couple takeaways from the data released from the city's Department of Education today, and it's a little bit of good news, bad news. Here's what I'm talking about. On the one hand, math scores dipped pretty significantly. Among kids tested in grades 3 to 8, only 38% had proficiency in math. That equates to a more than 7% drop when compared to the numbers from 2019. That is the last time standardized tests were taken. But on the other hand, the number of kids with proficient reading scores ticked up by 1.5%. Now, schools chancellor David Banks earlier today attributing both of these statistics to the pandemic. He says it is really quite simple. Learning math is much harder to do remotely than, say, reading. But he says city education has had problems since long before COVID.
But I think you have to remember, before the pandemic, we had a lot of kids who were failing in this system. So we can't talk about this as though, things were working well before.
I spoke to a professor at the Teachers College at Columbia University who says we should take the numbers that have just been released with a grain of salt for a few reasons. One, because city schools lost enrollment last year, and two, because so many parents opted their kids out of standardized tests. Now, he says because of that, it's less helpful to compare the results of last year to the tests pre-COVID. Rather, he says we should look at them a different way.
I think the most important thing is to not try to look backwards and try to think about moving forward, what's going to be the best approach to support New York City's kids. In many respects, these new scores can serve as a baseline for looking forward.
Now, schools chancellor David Banks also said today that while testing is important, sometimes the education system can be too focused on, quote, doing school. He says he wants to move forward thinking about how to make school more engaging for students and more relevant. Steve, Lori, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Chris.